Bonjour, je m'appelle Madame Kohler, je suis la prof de français. Aujourd'hui, je vais vous présenter ma classe. I'm going to go over how I structure my French classes. Each day, I give the students a list of key structures and we go over a daily introduction of questions and answers. So for example, on the first week of school, we're going over Je m'appelle, comment vous appelez-vous, dis bonjour, c'est un garçon, c'est une fille. And I would keep gesturing and giving different examples until they understand what I'm saying. And eventually they would understand that I'm asking them what their name is, to introduce themselves, to say hi to each other in the class. I also then give key structures based on the story that we're going to be presenting, so they're creating an ongoing vocabulary list. So for today, to give you an idea of what we do, un jour means one day, and qui means who. I always have a list of question words on the board, so if I'm asking a question in French, they can refer to the list and see what that means in English. So to give you an example with these key structures, un jour, une femme nage dans une piscine. And there are plenty of visuals for you to see. And then I might ask the question, qui nage dans une piscine? And together the whole class would say une femme. Now, I usually do this activity when I have parents sitting in front of me, and I always ask if you took a language in middle school or high school for 2 years or more. And then I always ask if your teachers focused on grammar and conjugation. And then I finally ask if you can still use the language today. And that is why I structure my classes the way I do. It's very conversation-based, question and answer. We're deskless, so we're conversation-based without a barrier in between all of us. And it feels more natural. It's almost like a mini immersion class. In my class, students are going to learn the 4 key structures of a language: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And they're going to learn French through the use of short stories, novels, short films, and movies. And this type of learning is called TPRS, which is Total Physical Response Through Storytelling, or CI for Comprehensible Input. Basically, the class functions with an opening. We go over the normal, traditional date, time, weather, question, response about each student, and we have a song of the week. We then have our lesson, which is the introduction of new vocabulary. We read through our stories, we ask questions, we have different reading activities, core response activities, translation. Normally we'd act out stories, but right now we have to be 6 feet apart, obviously, so that's not happening as much. We create storyboards, we draw the story, we finish the story, we recreate the story alone or with a partner, and we always close with a comprehension check. There is some technology that's involved in the classroom. The main piece of technology is Schoology, so they'll be using that mainly on Fridays, and they will have a desk on Fridays to complete those tasks. They have Quizlet homework, where they'll go over the vocabulary of the week. They have Duolingo, which is a self-paced module for language learning. Word Reference is an app or a website, and they're going to be using this website instead of Google Translate, which is considered cheating. So they need to use Word Reference to look up the correct translation of the word instead of putting something in Google Translate and it just coming out with one form of the word that might not be the correct form. We're also going to be using LanguageNut, which is a website that focuses on reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and I always encourage the students to get the apps on their phone. Our short stories come from Contes Fantastiques, which is by Amy Bachmann-Catania. She is an expert in TPRS. We also read 2 novels. These novels are written by French teachers for French students. So for example, in French 1, we read Pauvre Anne, which is called Poor Anne in English, and it's very, very basic. There is a girl. The girl is 14. The girl's name is Anne. Anne goes to the store. Anne has a friend. And then we read La France en danger, which is about Picasso. In level 2, we read Brandon Brown à la conquête de Québec and Les découvertes incroyables. And in French 3, we read Les nuits mystérieuses de Lyon and Au revoir l'Acadie. So a little bit about Lyon and then about Acadia. The students are graded based on the 4 skills that I talked to you about: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So they will have reading comprehension texts, writing samples that are graded on content, they're not graded based on grammar, conjugation, and spelling. They're based on how well I'm able to understand what they're writing. Are they able to give me a story with a beginning, middle, and end? Does it sound like the stories that we're reading in class? They have listening comprehension, speaking activities, and then the completion of Duolingo, Quizlet sets, classwork, Schoology assignments, and their video worksheets. So the grading system is reading is 35% of their grade. That's the easiest skill in a language. Listening is 35% of their grade, also another easy skill in the language. Writing is 15% of your grade because it's a little bit more difficult. Speaking is 10% of their grade. That's the most difficult skill in learning a language. And then work habits. Do they turn things in on time and are they completed? A quote for you. Learning a language is not a passive activity. When acquiring a second language, we learn to listen first. We learn to read what we listen to. We learn to write what we read and listened to. And then finally, we learn to speak because we listened, read, and then wrote it. And that's why I grade the way I do. So how can your students get help? I have 2 email addresses they can use after school or on the weekends if they're trying to get a hold of me. Now, my tvsd.info account will go straight to my phone, so I'll get that a lot quicker than my tvsd.org. Just reminding students to review Quizlet and Schoology, being on the Google site every day, especially if they're out or they didn't understand a story that we did in class. They can always get help before school, as long as they let me know ahead of time. And now that teachers are done at 2:30, they can always stay after school from 2:30 to 3 o'clock. There's also peer tutoring, which is available through guidance, and there's an abundance of online tools and lots of useful apps. So how can you help your child? You can help them by just reminding them every day that they do have that Quizlet homework. Even if they finish the homework, they should be on there reviewing the vocabulary. There's a bunch of different modules to help with memorizing the vocabulary, spelling it correctly, a bunch of different games. They should reread the stories if they're having trouble with, which are on my Google slides. You can find those on Schoology and on the Google site. They should be reviewing class notes and handouts, reminding them about the Duolingo and Quizlet homework, and then checking their Infinite Campus grades and Schoology. All of my syllabus and expectations and everything needed for the class are on Schoology. I did also print the syllabus and expectations out for my students. If you go on to my Google site, which I posted on the slide below, you can access all that information. It's also on Schoology, so if you would like the parent code, I can give you parent access to Schoology as well. Just reach out to me via email and I'll give you the code. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Au revoir.